Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first online UKCRF Network Symposium. My name is Helen Pidd. I'm the UKCRF Network Director, and I have great pleasure of opening this symposium along with my colleague, Professor Chris Newman.
Good morning, everyone. As Helen has said, my name is Chris Newman. I'm Director of the NIHR Sheffield CRF. I'd also like to welcome you to this symposium. We know that there are nearly 400 of you out there, even if we can't see you all. And so, if you're all sitting comfortably, let's begin. Over to you, Helen.
Thanks, Chris. Well, what can I say? Well done, everyone. What an amazing achievement. It makes me so proud to see what's been achieved. It's really hard actually to find the right words after seeing that video because even having watched it a few times, it still makes me feel quite emotional. It's just so powerful seeing all that work that was taking place across all of the 54 CRFs that the network supports and being showcased in such a short film. It's just amazing. I've always said that it takes special people to work in the clinical research facilities because you're working constantly with change. You need to adapt all the time, whether that's adapting the way you design your studies, being completely innovative in how studies are delivered, how samples are collected, processed, reported, and importantly, how we recruit patients to ensure that there's diversity and equality of access. The network was initially established on the basis of shared working, collaboration, to support the development of new roles, new ways of working, with always the aim of ensuring that we could deliver studies in a very safe environment, but to get the best, the highest quality data that we could. And I think it's the combination of these two things that have really equipped us, working with colleagues across the NHS, the BRC, R&D, but equipped us to respond at scale and pace to the pandemic when it hit, which has clearly been demonstrated in the wonderful video that we've just been shown. So today's symposium is designed to bring you all together because it's been several years since we've been able to do that. We know from previous conference feedback that the most important part of the conference is always the networking. So we want you to carry on with that networking. And from previous conferences, we know that the transfer of knowledge that happens at these events is incredible. So we hope you can get a flavour of that today. It's very much designed to celebrate your achievements, your individual contributions to the pandemic. So do take some time during the networking sessions that we've got planned to really consider your contribution, that of your CRF, locally, nationally, and globally. And we've designed the conference with a mixture of live sessions and recorded sessions as well. We've got some fantastic speakers, including Lucy Chappell, the Chief Scientific Advisor at the Department of Health and Social Care, who will share with us her reflection of what was achieved during the pandemic and what are some of the challenges we face going forward. We've structured the symposium so that we can celebrate achievements, but then look at the lessons learned through working in the way that we had to work through the pandemic, and then finally what the future holds for us all and how we can move forward as more informed CRFs who can deliver at scale and pace for our business as usual studies. I'm now going to hand over to Chris, who'll share some of his own reflections of the pandemic and then introduce us to two directors who really championed the pivotal contribution that CRFs were able to make to the pandemic effort. Chris.
Many thanks, Helen. And just to echo your comments, I'm sure we'd all agree that the way the network of CRS has evolved over the last 20 years involving developing and sharing good practice, coming together regularly at all levels, working with colleagues across the clinical research infrastructure, and promoting and delivering excellence in clinical research has been absolutely pivotal to our ability to respond at scale and pace in a highly coordinated and collaborative way to the challenges of the last 18 months. One element of our response as a network of CRFs was to put in place increased and regular, indeed up to weekly meetings between CRF directors to share intelligence and help coordinate our participation in the rapidly evolving and growing portfolio of COVID vaccine and therapeutic trials. So to give us some insights into this, I'm delighted to welcome two colleagues who played a particularly key role in the success of these director meetings. That's Saul Faust, Director of the NIHR Southampton CRF, and Richard Fitzgerald, Director of the NIHR Royal Liverpool and Broad Green CRF.
Thanks, Chris. We were going to start off with Richard talking, but I'd just like to congratulate him on how fantastic it was to see Liverpool CRF on the main BBC News last night.
Thanks all. As you can tell, I was heavily made up for it. So thank you, Chris and Helen, for the introduction, and again to echo how fantastic it is to have everyone together to celebrate some of the successes and look to the future of the CRFs in the next few years. So Saul, I'd really like to ask you a few questions, really thinking about collaboration being the watchword of what we've done, and to touch on Chris's point about the CRF directors and how we've come together as a group to enable vaccine and therapeutic trials in COVID.
Yeah, I mean, it looking back, it was an amazing time, Richard. I went back into my emails last night to see it in my Outlook diary to see if I could find when the first networking point for the CRF was in the pandemic. Do you want to have a guess when it was? What date?
I dread to think, but I imagine it was very soon into March, because I seem to recall that we started to have these sort of calls very, very early on.
Not even March. Friday the 7th of February was the first time that we sent round that we collaborated by sending round the ISARIC protocol. I think that was me. Somebody spotted that Callum Semple and his team were struggling to get traction across trust to set up the ISARIC CPP protocol, which, as you know, as everybody knows, was the main sort of epidemiological in-hospital survey for COVID. And we sent that out to all the CRFs on the 7th of February and said, look, can you help get this up and running in your trust? The ISARIC team were, hugely grateful, and that sort of spurred us to just carry on. And then, as you say, beginning of March, the 6th of March, was the first email update that we sent round all the directors as to what was going on. And between then and the 7th of April, I counted 22 different email updates. Some one in the morning, one in the evening, because what we'd done was got together with the R&D directors and the UKRD forum, and then not UKRD forum, UKRD network. Christine McGrath will never forgive me for that slip of the tongue, and the University Hospital Association, which is the another group of R&D directors, and just decided that we needed to operate together in order to deliver all the COVID vaccine research. So we just via email, but initially we basically just corralled everybody, led by the CRFs, to work together and operationalize within the institutions. So I mean, that first bit of working was canvassing all of us to say, because we've got a number of directors who are also R&D directors, like Nigel in Leicester, and other people who've been R&D directors and now CRF directors. And we basically got together and said, okay, so how are we going to prioritize the research in our institutions, not just focusing on the CRFs, but broadly, how can we get together? And that led to a very strong group of R&D together with CRFs who could then work, with Department of Health colleagues and CRN. But the original prioritization list of how we're going to prioritize studies in the pandemic came from the CRFs. And then, as you say, we we met by teleconference every 2 weeks from that time till July this year, when it became monthly.
And in terms of workforce, of course, that's another key part of what had to be operationalized across the whole network, isn't that right?
Yeah, I mean, as everybody on this call will know, some people found themselves doing CRF work with cancer studies because they were really important to keep going. But many people were working on pandemic research either in CRFs or in wider trusts, and others got redeployed because their ITU skills were more necessary to the NHS. And what was amazing to me was how everybody was collaborating, everybody was working together. It was only for the good of the public. Everybody looked to Chris Whitty, who was, directing what should be going on, and could see the urgent public health. We could all see that the urgent public health system, while having edges that some people were worrying about, why aren't we doing this study or that study, was actually incredibly important. And if you look at what the UK's done, not just recovery, but remap cap, the phase 1 and 2 studies that we'll come to in a minute, the vaccine work, none of that would have been possible without the UPH and everybody working collaboratively. And in fact, none of the other countries got anywhere near delivering that level of output for patient benefit. Dexamethasone, vaccines, everything
Absolutely.
came out of the UK.
Absolutely, and I think the UK has punched above its weight. And then briefly, so of course the revolution that has been the vaccines and the way the CRFs have delivered those across all phases.
We've just got a 2-minute warning, so I'm gonna shut up. The vaccines were great. We've seen them on the video, and we did get an opportunity to pilot our phase 1 framework with the Valneva phase 1 study. And of course, we're doing a lot of phase 1 and 2 work. But I'm gonna turn it around just quickly before we get cut off, and ask you about the agile and phase 2 platforms, because they're our core business in the CRFs, and you've done something pretty special in Liverpool and got us all working together across the network.
It's been a phenomenal success, and it was a delight yesterday to see molnupiravir being licensed, the first oral antiviral for the treatment of COVID-19, which Agile, of course, helped to deliver to license, and of course then the phase 2 platforms too, which of course were complex, really complex early phase studies, not necessarily occurring in the CRFs as well. So talking to the workforce piece of having to get out and about into ITUs and wards, as well as working across the CRN, trying to get the CRFs linked in properly so that we were targeting hotspots. It was a great effort across all NHR infrastructure, but really, supported hugely by our CRF colleagues. Incredible.
Yeah, and I think that collaboration piece, I think, to tell all our staff, we felt really appreciated by Helen Campbell, Louise Wood, Louise Knowles, and our DHSC colleagues, who I think have absolutely recognised the work that you have all done. It wasn't just speech for the video. We have felt it as directors. So
And I think that that's critical, isn't it? Is that actually the level of appreciation across all levels of the DHSC for what the CRFs have achieved, what the staff have achieved. Sometimes at very difficult circumstances and putting themselves forward for what was considered quite risky stuff is incredible, and everyone should feel ultimately extraordinarily proud of their efforts on this.
Great, and I think that we've just about run out of time, and I'm expecting to see Helen come back onto screen. There we go.
She has popped up.
Thanks, Richard.
Thanks all.
Thanks very much, Richard and Saul, for that great insight actually into some of the workings behind the scene that were taking place, and all of the hard work that was taking place. So thank you very much for that. Okay, so a few housekeeping things now down to me. So the first thing is, if you've navigated onto the Hopin platform, well done. If you need any help with any of the technical issues, there is a help desk function if you go to the round tables section, which is on the left of your screen, and somebody from the team is available to help you. Otherwise, if you've got colleagues that are struggling to get onto the platform, you can email Sophie, and I believe Sophie's email is going to appear in the chat. For those of you that haven't already, the Poster Expo opened yesterday. We've got over 80 posters detailing, some of it celebrating some of our successes, the lessons learned, and how people have adapted and changed. Practice. So please do make time to go and visit the expo. They're a great way to learn about what everybody else has been doing and how maybe you can adapt and bring things back to your CRF. Some of the speakers today, as I've already said, are recorded and some are live. For those speakers that are live, there is a Slido function, which means you can type questions in. You can either put your name to those questions or you can ask them anonymously. But just to bear in mind that everybody can see your question in the chat. Some questions will be selected to appear on screen and will be answered by the speakers, but everybody will be able to see all of your questions. We encourage you to introduce yourself in something called a chat box. You can put your contact details and chat to others throughout the conference. So if you see somebody's registered and you want to ask them something, then that's a great way to do it. We're also asking teams or individuals to take photographs of themselves throughout the session, and you can put those onto Twitter, and I think the Twitter hashtag will appear throughout the conference, and we'll also be selecting some of those to appear at the end of the conference. So it's a great opportunity to get yourself up on the big screen. One of the highlights of our conference, for those of you that have attended previously, is always the networking. And that is a bit more of a challenge when we're doing it online. But we've tried to build into the conference a number of breakout sessions. And we really encourage you to join them because it's a great way to chat to colleagues, to find out more. So we're about to go to our first breakout session, and most of you should have received through the post your delegate box. Apologies to those people that haven't, and I know some people haven't because of a glitch in registration, and for some people that only registered this week, but most people should have received a box. So the idea of the box is you navigate yourself now through clicking on the round table to your breakout room that you've been allocated to. You can go and make yourself a cup of tea, you can have a look what's in the box, and you can have a chat to your colleagues before we come back for the next session at 9:40. But there'll be a big message on screen to say when we're going back to the next session. So go and open your boxes, have a chat to everybody, and we'll see you all at 9:40.